whether they put it in writing or not, one of the key things they will debate or negotiate is, can they get the Chinese currency to appreciate? Because they feel the Chinese surpluses are too strong on goods exports. And even though Indians and Europeans may have a few differences with Americans, this is one thing everybody agrees on. That, the Chinese export surplus, Chinese manufacturing capacity is just too large. And we have to put anti-dumping duties on this sector or that sector, and just getting out of control. Because what happened was, China after 2020, just before COVID started, had tried to control the real estate boom. Then COVID happened. So domestic consumption anyways was unlikely to happen when everybody's in lockdown. So they redirected those public sector banks, which we discussed, right? Government control, state control. They redirected credit from there to manufacturing. और domestic consumption low है, तो manufacturing का credit कहाँ पे जाएगा? वो factory में जाके वो goods कहाँ जाएगा? Export होगा. They had $1 trillion plus goods trade surplus last year. Of course, some of it is front running in the sense that people knew the tariffs were coming. So लोग inventory restock कर रहे थे अमेरिका में, यूरोप में, etc. Especially in America. But the point is, the Chinese goods surplus has become so large that the rest of the world at this scale of Chinese economy just cannot absorb it. So the Chinese will not be accepting this eventually out of a sign of being bullied. They will be very careful about that. But the only partial satisfying outcome of this trade war from a US-China perspective is if the Chinese do accept that pivoting towards domestic consumption fully, or at least more significantly than so far, is the only sustainable way to continue any kind of sensible global trading or economic architecture. So that is one of the things. This does not mean in the short term they cannot devalue further. I want to be very clear, because they may devalue just to get a negotiating brownie point in. Because basically both of them are negotiating with guns to each other's heads, right? Effectively. Both of them are playing brinksmanship. 100%, 150%. I mean, numbers have become berserk, right?
Wait, 245 is the latest.
245 is not the latest. 245 with the numbers they mentioned, including pre-existing 100% tariff on EVs in China. Okay. So the headline number across the board remains 145. For example, the 100% on Chinese EV imports into America was 100%. That was added. So they said some goods up to 245%. Okay. So, I mean, that is like a car goes for $10,000 there and it's $35,000. Okay. So that is for all practical purpose saying that $20,000 becomes $70,000. Right? So that's for all practical purpose saying that we don't want to import your cars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a realistic number, right? So the broad point is, currency is very fascinating because it leads to geopolitical effects, it leads to trading effects, it leads to investing effects. And one of the things which is so relevant in today's investing world, geopolitically, geoeconomically, is that a country can, in the short term, medium term, gain more export scale by just devaluing the currency.
I just wanted to clarify or delve deeper into when you said that अगर एक country की currency depreciate हो रही है तो उसके exports more competitive हो जाते हैं.
Right? Other things being equal.
Yeah. Ceteris paribus. So that is, I think, constant
in
assumption.
general हम बोलेंगे.
Yeah, in all the cases.
Yes.
तो इसमें एक example के साथ just मेरे को explain करना है audience को. So for example, अगर रुपी की मैं बात करूँ तो रुपी अगर $1, let's say $1 was rupees 80, and एक product था इंडिया में जो 100 rupees का बिक रहा था.
आप 80 rupees का ही बोलो ना. Simple.
हाँ ठीक है, चलो 80 rupees का $1 में वो $1 का हो गया. अभी जैसे रुपी डेप्रिशिएट हो गया, रुपी डेप्रिशिएट होके इजी पर्पस के लिए मैं 120 मान के चलता हूँ. $1 120 हो गया. तो यही सेम प्रोडक्ट जो है अभी
67 सेंट्स का हो गया.
हाँ करेक्ट, 67 सेंट्स का हो गया. सो दैट्स व्हाई यूएस के लिए अभी ये सेम प्रोडक्ट जो है वो
सस्ता हो गया.
दैट्स व्हाई एक्सपोर्ट्स विल बिकम मोर कॉम्पिटिटिव बिकॉज यूएस के लिए अभी ये सस्ता हो गया. समझ गया.
एंड इसमें भी जो सेटरिस पैरिस बोला उस पे आते हैं. इंटरेस्टिंगली द फर्स्ट डेकेड ऑफ द सेंचुरी और मिलेनियम, 2002 to 2007 particularly, when the rupee was strengthening, the dollar was weakening, compared to the last 5-10 years when the dollar was strengthening and the rupee was weakening, you would think the last 10 years would be better for export growth. That is not the case. 2002 to 2007 was better. Why? Which is why economics and finance is so fascinating. There is always a second order effect. Because when the dollar was weakening, global demand was rising. Generally, dollar weakening means 4% of the population of the world से पैसा निकल के rest of the world में liquidity जा रही है. So actually, despite the rupee strengthening in that decade or broadly remaining flat around mid 40s or high 40s from 2000 to 2010, taking out the financial crisis, The taper tantrum finally happened in 2013. तो 2012 तक 50 के आसपास ही था. Despite the rupee being so strong in nominal and especially in real terms, it is the best time for exports growth. Uske baad, the rupee has actually gone down to almost high 80s, and goods growth, services is a bit of an exception, but goods growth has nowhere been as close because global economy was a bit slow because money was going back to the US. So there's always a second order effect. This applies more for US cycle में जो हो रहा है, India, Vietnam में India suddenly weaken हो जाए because both of us are exporting to the US or developed markets. It becomes more relevant then, which is why I said, even though the dollar index, as reported in Economic Times, Financial Times, is often a basket of US dollar against developed market currencies, the RBI still keeps a strong eye on USD CNY. In fact, all other Asian economies keep an eye on CNY because अगर वो weaken होता है, other countries are forced to at least competitively devalue to some extent, or if not devalue, at least they are not allowed that easily to appreciate their currencies. Because directly and indirectly they are competing with China for exports.
Got it.
So it's a relative thing more than an absolute thing all the time. So it's maybe it's always a bit asterisk.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean it's not a slam dunk answer for the viewers, but it is how it is.
No, but I think this is very helpful because ceteris paribus जो हम बोलते हैं, I think of course theoretically we have to say that, but practically that will never be the case.
Because वो जब generally कुछ होता है तो उसके कुछ और concomitant effects भी होते हैं.
Yeah. Correct. But I think for explanatory purpose, this was like very helpful.
Yes.
If you learned something new from this video, do share it with your friends and subscribe to this channel so that we can bring you the best content possible. Also, if you want to watch this entire episode, click on the link in the description box and you can go to Kushal Lodha YouTube channel and watch the entire podcast episode. Thank you so much for watching this and have an amazing day.